court in Cambodia has resumed a mass trial of more than 60 opponents of the government. Most have been charged with treason for taking part in non-violent political activities. The trial has been heavily criticized by rights groups and described as a sham by the opposition. Florence Louis reports.
Thierry Singh, a Cambodian-American human rights activist and lawyer, is facing charges of conspiracy to commit treason and incitement to create social disorder. She's described the charges as absurd, but at the same time hasn't ruled out the possibility that she could be found guilty and sentenced to prison.
It's a political theater. The decision will be made by politicians, not judges. So this is why we know that it's not a genuine trial. I'm being persecuted for my political opinion.
Nearly 130 people, mostly former supporters and members of the disbanded opposition party, the Cambodian National Rescue Party, or CNRP, have been charged with similar crimes. Their trial was due to begin last November, but the court split the cases into two, with one hearing due to start on Thursday, the other in March. The UN has voiced concerns the charges appear to be politically motivated. Many defendants are accused of being involved with organizing a failed trip by former opposition leader Sam Rainsy to return to Cambodia from self-imposed exile. Rainsy had been Prime Minister Hun Sen's biggest political rival for years. In 2017, a year before the last general election, Hun Sen launched a sweeping crackdown on his opponents. The CNRP was forced by the court to disband, its leader Kem Sokha arrested ahead of the election. Rights activists say the upcoming trial will help Hun Sen, who's been Prime Minister for 36 years, to strengthen his grip on power.
What we're seeing in Cambodia today is the consolidation of dictatorship. We're seeing the last vestiges of political opposition swept away. That means local and provincial councillors of the CNRP, various political activists, civil society people are all being swept up in these mass trials.
The government says the charges are legitimate and that the trial will proceed like any other. Florence Louis, Al Jazeera.
And you heard Florence Louis mention Sam Rainsy in her report. We can now speak to him. He's the acting president of the banned opposition party, the Cambodia National Rescue Party. He's joining us from Paris. That's where he lives in exile. Thanks for your time with us on the Al Jazeera News Hour. So this case, this trial that we're seeing right now in Cambodia is directly linked to your attempt to return to Cambodia in 2019 from France, where you currently live. First, what is your reaction to all the charges and the trial?
Anybody who does not agree with the government, the Hun Sen government, is accused of treason. So I wanted to go back to Cambodia in 2019, but I was prevented. The Hun Sen government has forbid all airline companies to carry me to Cambodia, and Hun Sen blocked my entry into Cambodia. Actually, Hun Sen is very afraid of any representative of the opposition.
Right, and he accused you at the time of an attempted coup, effectively. So will you try to return to Cambodia and defend yourself?
I will go back as soon as I can. Now my colleague, Vice President Musapur, is trying to go back in 2 days, but there is a fear that she will not be allowed to do so. So it's very strange. On the one hand, Hun Sen's government is prosecuting us. He is accusing us of many ludicrous crimes. But on the other hand, we are not allowed to attend our trials.
What do you think the purpose of this trial is?
It's just a travesty of justice. These trials are intended to intimidate the population because the main leaders of the opposition are abroad. They want to prosecute us, but they don't want us to be in the country, because this could be an opportunity for the population to rise up. Therefore, they prevent us from going back to Cambodia, and they conduct these ludicrous trials in order to frighten and to intimidate the population.
But your party, of course, is banned. So what impact is that having on the state of the opposition in Cambodia and those in exile like yourself?
The opposition party, which is the only credible opposition party, the only one that was represented at the National Assembly, this party has been banned. But the ban is on paper only. Actually, the party is vibrant in the hearts of the people who continue to support the opposition because the majority of the people want a democratic change in Cambodia.
What are you basing that on? You're sitting in Paris, forgive me, but you're in Paris and saying the majority of the people support the opposition. What evidence do you have of that, or what are you basing that on?
At the last election, when we were allowed to take part in, we collected nearly half of the popular vote, and this in spite of massive fraud. Had the election been honest, we would have won already. And since then, the popular support has been growing for us. And this explains why the government is so afraid of us banning our party before the following election. They knew that we were going to win. It is the reason why they banned us just before the election. And now they prevent the leaders of the opposition to go back to Cambodia while prosecuting them in absentia. This shows that the government is very afraid of the opposition. Actually, their days are counted.
And just briefly on what you mentioned a moment ago about going back, you said as soon as you can. Can you elaborate on that and tell us what exactly your plans are?
When the Hun Sen government lifted the prohibition for airline companies to carry me, then I will catch the next flight to go to Cambodia. But now the government has asked all airline companies not to carry me back to Cambodia.
All right, Sam Rainsy, we thank you so much for speaking to us from Paris.
Thank you.